Call this meeting to order.
Okay, this meeting will be recorded. I'll start with roll call. Chairman Farrell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burns,
Here.
Member Cresser is currently absent. Member Michelle Cresser here, and Member Lawrence Stevens.
Here. All right, first on the agenda, we have the motion to approve the May 3rd agenda. Do I have any additions, changes, or as presented? Motion. I have a motion. All those approve, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Do I have a motion to approve the February 1, 2021 meeting minutes? Second. First, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. All right, number 3, we have Bennett's Court preliminary land development presentation.
Gentlemen, you're on. Hold on, let me start by saying in the packet that was mailed to your house was, this should have contained what the code zoning officer had, who he distributed all the plans to, and all the correspondence that were in that packet. So that I did not duplicate that since you had it in your packet. In your packet that was sent for the planning commission was the preliminary plan review number 3 from Persich Chad Camburn, the Montgomery County Conservation District letter, the zoning officer's letter, the fire marshal's letter, McMahon and Associates letter, and utility engineers review letter, and then the Montgomery County Planning Commission review letter. So that's what was in your packet that was sent to you. So everybody knows what they have.
And then also tonight, for reference, they handed out renderings of what the units are going to look like. They look very nice. Especially, I like Sharon's garage doors. They look really sharp.
This is the.
So-
See that?
I'll let you guys.
Okay, we will, well, first to give a description of the project and the property. I think. we can update this in the features plan.
The plans, oh man,
I
guys.
think it should be,
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Oh no, this is lots of pressure. I have. Why isn't it up there? Plans were up here. Of course, my luck. All right, well, this might not work out. We attempt to. Because here's the plans. There we go. Sorry.
I'm still learning all that too.
This.
But yeah, and maybe sheet 4 is just shows existing.
Sheet 4. That one?
Yeah, that's with an aerial view. So that the property comes in, Maple Avenue there, and then there is an old paper street that comes straight back toward the Hatfield Township line. And currently it's 4 different parcels that will be basically combined into one lot and then subdivided into 18 new lots. The existing single family home that's, I think it's the 3rd one down from Paper Street will remain a single family home. So that's actually part of the property. There'll be one single family dwelling that's existing that will remain, but be carved out into its own lot. And then there'll be a new street right of way. So the property is about 2.7 acres, not counting the paper street. Mostly meadow. There are some trees throughout there. There's an existing driveway that kind of loops around to serve one of the houses. There's also an existing alley that heads north off of the paper street too that serves about 4 or 5 houses along there too. There is an old, I guess it's an old garage or some kind of some ruined building on the site, right off of the alley on the property. And then surrounding it, we have a mix of single-family homes, some twins, and then Hatfield Village Apartments, which is there to the south and east. So that's the existing site there. Then on sheet 3, the good one. That just shows what we're proposing to do. Oh, I'm sorry, the next one down. Yeah, so there it is showing the road improvements, putting in the new road with a cul-de-sac turnaround at the end. 18 units, and there are 3 buildings of 6 units each. And, and then some parking areas along the side. We have stormwater management, with a larger basin up to the north. There's also a rain garden. It's not really shown on the plan, but it's in that triangular piece down south of the road, next to the parking area and next to the townhomes. There's that triangle there. We have a rain garden. There's also an underground storage basin underneath the cul-de-sac. So a lot of stormwater management on the site. And then for utilities, we'll have connection to the borough sewer, and then North Penn Water Authority for the water, borough electric, and your standard central utilities from there on. There will be an HOA that we propose as part of this too, to maintain the road from stormwater facilities. There will be sidewalk, at least on the north side of the road and some on the south side of the new driveway too, and we can probably get into that a little bit more. We're also proposing to improve the alley. There's the alley there, which is gravel, probably some old pavement there. But that'll be something that.
Nice question.
Yes.
Your homeowners association. Is it your intention you're gonna maintain the road? So you're gonna maintain the road, maintain the stormwater facilities, all with the homeowners association.
That is correct.
So it won't be dedicated to the borough.
That is correct.
Correct. But on initial discussions with the borough and work with borough staff, I think that was the preference. That it was not, would not be. owned by the borough. That's a brief summary of the project. And I can answer any questions in more detail on anything there.
The next in discussions, either Mike or the zoning officer, or I know, I'm not sure if you were here for a meeting, I know I think I met one of you guys on site. Yeah. I thought there was an issue with secondary emergency access trying to go possibly to the apartments or something along those lines. Is that issue ever worked out, or is that issue, where do we stand with it?
And I was gonna get into initial listening, we got into the letter. But that is something that we are still working out. We did provide an exhibit showing one option of going from the cul-de-sac, tying into the cul-de-sac that's right around the corner there. Yeah, at the top there, the cul-de-sac and actually going on to a little bit of the Hatfield Village Park, and then tying back in. So that is one option that we're looking at.
You have to do it in the screen.
It wasn't part of the plan, so
Okay.
we just had it as a separate attachment. It's right here. I only have one copy there.
We're down to look opposite.
We can just hand it down.
Yeah. That's one thing we're looking
I
at.
have one spot.
I guess in a sense too, that's, I guess, option A. But we also have a couple other options we're looking at to keep things on site.
And this other cul-de-sac is in the township, correct?
The cul-de-sacs in the borough, but Hatfield Village Apartments is in the township.
And then this would connect into the Hatfield Village Apartments.
It wouldn't connect,
Well,
it would just access.
It would be an
the road.
emergency access.
Right. So it would actually go on
South
to
Florida.
Okay, so that's still in the borough.
Yes.
Okay,
the,
okay,
but a portion of the access will be in the township on the village apartments.
understand.
Sort of like right in the PPL right away.
Correct.
Yeah.
PPL has a line that separates, actually, they have a trunk line that runs down between the borough and the township, right on that Hatfield Village Park.
Trying to be respectful of Zoom. This is our preferred option. We are trying to work with the property owner. We have an alternative, which again, we've only spoken to the one neighbor so far who has agreed to allow access, which is Mr. Horrock's property. So, and we're going to try to come up with an exhibit where we end up looping around that. We're working on that now. If we're not successful in coming to terms with all the parties.
No, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is the hatching, but you show this as a stone. I don't know if we could work it so that it's the grass paver, so that,
That's the plan.
that is the plan. Okay.
Yeah, the grass pit.
Okay, because that way
We can mow it.
you can,
won't be
most people
seen.
don't even know that it's there.
That's exactly what the plan is.
Yeah, I think we just show with that hatch, this that's a placeholder in a sense. It's
Majority of the fraction already in place on the other cul-de-sac.
right, there is, on that cul-de-sac is actually, yeah.
We are making sure we have some type of emergency access.
And you have an alternative plan B.
We have a plan B in design, but not in design.
Okay,
Exception.
got it.
Exactly.
Understood.
I don't know as if we specifically need to go through every comment in the letters. More specifically is any comments you have problems with, and then I'd like to discuss the waivers. So, you know, I'll let you figure how you want to do that. And let's talk about if there's any issues or problems with Chad's letter. And then we have Chad on the Zoom, we're paying him by the word, so we'll let him talk.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for the most part is, we'll comply, a lot of the comments are.
I just want to make note that the zoning hearing board did grant some variances already, okay? Just for the record.
Yes, and that is noted in Chad's
And
letter.
Chad's
I
letter.
think on the second page. or
Yes.
Third page,
Yes.
second page.
But just for-
Second and third.
Second and third, thanks,
Second
Chad.
and, yeah.
Why don't we just discuss the items instead of going through the whole letter?
Yeah,
Why don't we just discuss the items we discussed, which are the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, we can go through the waivers. There were a couple of things that Chad brought up, which involves some feedback from the borough. So maybe we'll touch on those now. They're not, I don't say issues, but we're just looking to get some feedback on how to respond to a couple of these. So, and I'll just point out too, one of the big items here is the quickly, is getting ownership of that. So we are working through that process. We've been in touch with Chad and the solicitor and the borough, and I think we have a plan in place. And we'll just continue to move forward with that. So that would put the mechanism in place to for that roadway.
Chris, would you mind, if I can interrupt, would you mind just briefly discussing what the quit claim is? I don't know that that's a very common process for everybody.
So it's basically the properties along East Broad Street from Maple Avenue to where your property begins.
Yeah.
Is that
I mean,
fair
it's
enough?
The whole, it's, right, you can see it on the plan. There's an area that's on the old tax maps, and I guess it never ordained, the borough never
Right.
took over the road, but it shows up in all maps. And even the properties on that paper street don't have title to this, they have title to the right of way. It's all references a 33-foot right of way. So their title does not go to the center of the street. It just goes to that right of way. And the residents on the alley, they also have, easements in their deeds referencing this alley, the alley exiting onto what's called Broad Street and all the old deeds, which is this paper street. And it comes straight out. It's 33 feet wide. And it goes right from Maple straight back. Should I get up and point it out? I mean, that'll help you guys out, but it might, anybody that's watching won't, but it really just starts here. It's 33 feet wide from here and then continues. It's also 30 feet wide all the way straight back to the
township property.
yeah. So the quit claim then is just having the property owners that abut this, and there's two of them. There's a Lurch on the north and then the Stoffers on the south side, who just give up their rights to have any claims to that area. And then the remainder of it is owned by Prestige, and Jeff Horrocks is also an applicant on this project as well. So they would all give up their rights to claim that, and then Prestige would claim that as part of the quit claim. And then as part of the project, we'd be giving additional right of way to make it a 40-foot right of way on the lands that we have control over. So in between Lurch and Stoffer, it'll still be a 33-foot right of way, because that is their land. Then the rest of the area would be a 40-foot right of way. And then it'll be also be extended to include going along the property line, township borough line, the property line, all the way back. Chad, I don't know if you're thinking about anything else that I missed.
No, I just wanted you to explain. You did a good job. I wanted you to explain the fact that it's just this void area that nobody knows who owns. I mean, William Penn might still own the thing for all we know. So the question becomes, what right does Prestige have to build this road? And in order to try, to alleviate trying to backtrack who owns it, they're going through the process of making everyone aware who's in that vicinity that they want to do this development, and getting essentially their sign off or their authorization to make these improvements. So they're going through a formal process called a quit claim. Kate's been involved. She's been, proceeding through this with developer's attorney, and they both feel comfortable that this is the right process to go forward with.
And we did go back and do some research, but it got to a point where there was nothing found. There were plans references in some of the deeds, but the courthouse didn't have copies of anything. So we kind of exhausted as much as we could.
You've been having conversations with
The two residents that you got.
I'm not sure if they are opposed. I have that with spoken to the Lurches, and I have recently met with the Stoffers, who I'm meeting with again this week. So I'm pretty confident we'll come to a resolution.
seems pretty.
Yeah. Wasn't this Stoffer's property you bought?
Well, we bought the property in the back. It was part
That was
of
part
a
of-
separate parcel in the borough.
Right, so I would think if they sold the property back to the development, why would they say no to this? You would think.
I don't see it being-
Yeah, I don't see it being an issue either. Continue with the waivers.
You want to finish the discussion items? Just-
Oh, sure, that's fine, sure.
There's not too many. Another one here was subdivision and land development, comment 4B, about handicap ramps at Maple Avenue and Bennett's Court. So we're on our plan right now. We show both sides of Bennett's Court having handicap ramps. That's where the sidewalk is in now. It runs along there. So one of Chad's comments was just the borough should consider if like the applicant would saw a crosswalk across Maple Avenue and a handicap ramp on the west side. There's sidewalk on both sides of the road, but there's and it's kind of tied into another one of his comments was the consideration of having that be a three-way stop. So we were just,
Yeah, and that would really, you should really request an opinion from your traffic engineer as well. I don't know if he offered one in his letter, but if you look at the plan, the concern is that there really isn't very good sight lines there, and there is no way for there to be good sight lines. You have it at houses on both sides with existing improvements that are outside the control of this developer. So there's nothing they can really do to get rid of those site infringements. So the question is, does the borough want to err on the side of safety and have a three-way stop, or are they comfortable that there's going to be limited traffic going in and out of this development and they don't feel there's a need on Maple Ave to be a stop? And then that ties into, if there is a stop, then would you want a crosswalk across Maple Ave at that location?
I think if you have a stop, you have to have a crosswalk.
I don't recall if McMahon commented on that or not.
No,
I think that's probably a good solution. Let's let McMahon review and comment, and then we can, see where it goes from there. I mean, either way, 3 stop signs paint is not a huge ticket item in the scheme of things. It's no matter, is there a need or a warrant for it or not, so I think having McMahon comment would be good.
The developer doesn't object, so. Whatever is best for the.
And the next one too, and this is something we had talked with McMahon and Chad about, was the mid-block crossing that we have on the plan. Yeah, we should. You're done.
Look at that, I'm getting better.
You're getting.
That's good. I'll point this out here too. And this is related to the crossing we have right here. So we have sidewalk on the north side, extending all the way to the parking areas in the cul-de-sac, all of the north side to here. And then we have a crossing and then continuing on to Maple Avenue on the other side. We're also, we don't have a show right now, part of complying with Chad's letter, we're going to be adding a sidewalk up to these parking spaces here. So we'll have sidewalk on both sides of the street. So I know our preference was to have the crossing here. And some of those reasons are as part of the Jim's conversations with the Lurches, they have a need for a parallel.
They've been parking there forever, and we didn't want to disrupt that. So we felt that we got together and came up with a design, giving them some on-street parking, and I really just didn't want to be disrupting them. I was trying to be respectful.
So we were offering to put the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. That parking. And
Lindsay, are you able to zoom in on that for John and Michelle's visual
No.
aids here? This is one of the topics I wanted to bring up as well. If the developer didn't, I'm glad they are. Maybe a little bit more if you can.
Just go back to the setback a little bit.
More Chad or less?
Right there is good.
Oh,
Well, John and Michelle, weigh in if you can't see it.
I can see it.
all right.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
yeah, so just some of our thoughts were, and there's pros and cons to both. It's just, our thoughts were because of the parking as a main reason to put the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. You also have a crossing of the alley, and if we do extend the sidewalk too, there will be more traffic down that side. So it's kind of open for discussion because, like I mentioned, I think there's pros and cons to both. But I don't think it's works best for everybody.
Chad, what's your main issue about it?
So I was kind of wavering on this. You have 12 of the 18 units on one side of the road, and you have to imagine this is going to be a private street. So there's going to be a bus stop at the intersection of Maple and what this is going to be called Bennett's Court. So in order to avoid, multiple kids or people crossing the road at an uncontrolled stop or uncontrolled location, we'd rather have the sidewalk all on one side just to avoid crossings of the street. I say I wavered on this or was unsure because, it's a private community, 18 houses, 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. I didn't want to be unreasonable. So what we did is we asked the developer to provide an exhibit or a sketch of what it would look like if the sidewalk was on one side so that we could see if it's reasonable and if it could work. I also contacted your traffic engineer after the exhibit was proposed, and we're both in agreement that we'd like the alternative or alternate layout better. We just think it functions better from a safety perspective. And I don't know if you have that exhibit available to see, but it does not eliminate those 3 parking spaces next to the Stauffer property. It shifts the roadway down to the property line just in front of the the Stauffer property. But really it's, in our opinion, it doesn't have a negative impact. It improves safety.
I was just gonna mention though, with us adding the sidewalk on the opposite side, as was requested, we would still have to put a mid-block crossing there. I think at the time, we didn't have sidewalk proposed on the opposite side. So I think we still need to put a mid-block crossing there either way.
Because of the alley.
Because, well, no, because we're gonna add sidewalk. One of Chad's comments too was adding sidewalk to access to these parking spaces. So we're gonna add sidewalk along here as well. And then this side will then have to cross.
And the reality there is what's going to happen is if there's any kids in those 6 units, so now you're talking 6 units would have to cross the road as opposed to 12, which is a positive. Reality is they're going to walk out their front door, they're going to walk down the driveway and walk across the street. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
But by leaving, we're fine either way, but by leaving the crosswalk as it is, if the children technically would go, the wall, you do avoid the traffic that is going down that alley. And just like last night, and you avoid the lurches, parallel parking potentially. I mean, either way is fine. We're not disagreeing, but, it's just a
Right,
discussion
we'll
item.
work with whatever,
But it would be nice to get the children, I believe, to the Stauffer side because of the alley coming in. I was there last night at 5 o'clock and 2 cars did come in and it was, peak time and went down that alley. So again, it doesn't really matter to us.
but I think it's kind of, 601 in, as the other.
And I'd agree with that. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's a preference.
I guess I disagree with. I don't like this. This is just my preference. I don't like this little fluky flu in the road of shifting the road down. I would rather keep what you guys are proposing, have them, if they have to cross the street. Kids are gonna walk in the middle of the street anyway. They're never gonna use that sidewalk.
Correct.
There's so limited amount of traffic on that road that, and I hate to say it, all the mommies are gonna bring all their kids down to drive them to the bus stop because it's too far for them to walk. So, I think this little fluky flu in the road is gonna cause a little more problems than what that is going to, but that's only my opinion.
In their Suburbans.
In their Suburbans, because we're all a bunch of snowflakes, but you didn't hear that from me.
It's on the plans. I should, we think that too, traffic. To people, right? And there's no way to that.
Yeah.
So the discussion here is amongst the planning commission members that are here is what you have on the screen is acceptable at this time.
And then, but I would couch that by saying unless McMahon or Chad, there's a life safety issue that they feel would trump that, I would rather go with this design than the little fluky flu in the road to, to curve it in on the Stauffer side.
Lindsay, do you happen to have an exhibit of that? I actually emailed it to Jamie, not knowing Jamie wasn't going to be on. I emailed it to her this afternoon for this purpose. But
We have a copy of it here, Chad.
They have a copy they're looking at on the table, but John and Michelle do not have a copy
I
of
can
it.
hold it up in front of the
I
camera.
can forward it to John and Michelle via email.
That would be fine.
And Ken, to respond to your life safety issue, like I said, you're going to have people crossing the street regardless. I would just prefer to have 6 houses cross the street as opposed to 12. But again, it's 15 miles an hour. It's controlled, limited number of cars coming in and out. It's not a through street. Again, I think it's preference as opposed to a necessity.
All right, then I think the consensus, at least for 3 of us, are leave it how it's designed here.
And I just sent that to you.
I got it.
Oh. We have one other item to discuss.
Should be a pretty straightforward one. One was, Chad was mentioning the borough would like to have a street light at the corner there. That's awesome. So at that new intersection. I don't recall if there's something there or not, but I think there's something there for, you know, if there's kids at the bus stop or so. I think that's a good idea.
So do I.
Yeah, and I figured that would be the case, but that was just mentioned here to get some borough. So,
We're actually looking at new solar street lights. We started an LED program, but then we sort of slowed it down because the solar street lights are now becoming a little more desirable. And the solar street lights don't need these big panels anymore to operate. Just a panel on top of the light itself is adequate to get it through the night. The technology's caught up to the need. So we have a couple test sites in town. I'll let you know how they work out.
Yeah, we can go into the waivers. I think the first one is something that isn't in the letter, because it's something that came up afterwards, and it's related to the quick claim. And it was regarding a subdivision waiver request for the paper street, which, you know, shown as East Broad Street on the original tax maps, which would now be Bennett's Court. And it's so the county can then assign a parcel number to that street right of way as part of the quick claim process. And I think the county's thoughts were it needed to be waived from subdivision. Have a deemed.
That's the tax mapping.
Because of the tax mapping. So it'll be, they have to set up a tax number from what they told us, but it's a non-conforming lot because it's a street right of way. So it doesn't comply with standard lot.
So as far as and I don't know if anybody else is speaking, so I'm sorry if I'm interrupting. As far as the process of quit claim will go, these plans, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, these plans will illustrate that right of way as property owned by Prestige. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's how that right of way would then be shown as a separate property owned by Prestige.
Okay, so, but that won't actually occur until that quit claim is recorded, which will not occur until just before this project is recorded. Is that correct?
Right, because they were creating that parcel to be included as part of this.
Right, so these plans are actually showing something that has not yet occurred, which is fine. But I want everybody to understand that right now, it's not owned by Prestige, although you're showing it as a property owned by Prestige, because that process will occur just before this plan is recorded.
That is correct.
And if it doesn't happen, they can't record the plan.
Exactly.
So I'm okay with it.
And I think the way that Howard, the attorney, wrote it was the council would be the ones that would have to, you know, approve that. We're just getting input from the planning commission. But that was something that the county tax mapping office, so they would need some kind of letter that said something along those lines.
We basically letting the borough know that they were aware.
Okay, so now I'll go into the waivers on the letter. The first one was, it's a local access street, and it required right of way for a local access street is 40 feet. As mentioned before, the area between the Stauffer and Lurch property is 33 feet. So we're asking a waiver to have that area only where we have be a 33-foot right of way. That is the first waiver. It's really just because it's site space.
And that's actually under subdivision land development ordinance comment. I don't believe that was a waiver you requested yet.
So yeah, subdivision land development ordinance comment number 1. Section 22-404.
Lindsay, can you pop that plan back on the screen, please?
Sure. Which one?
If you zoom in just a little bit more on that one,
Okay.
maybe one more notch. Okay. So if you look, it's going to be hard to explain this, but that area, if you see the Lurch property, which is to the, I'll say the north or to the top of the gray roadway, you see a property called Beverly K. Lurch. And then below that, you'll see a property called Barbara J. Stauffer. The land between that is the new private right-of-way, street right-of-way. By your ordinance, that's required to be 40 feet wide. The existing land between those two properties is only 33 feet wide. They have no rights to widen that. It's owned by other people. So their waiver is a request to allow the 30 feet wide with 33 feet wide, which currently exists, as opposed to 40 feet, which is required by your ordinance. And then if you move up to the right, I'll say where that letter D is, that's where Prestige owns the property, and they are then widening it to 40 feet because they can. So we're talking about that first, I don't know if it's 100, 200 feet from Maple Ave into their property will only be 33 feet wide.
But there's also no development. There's no development on that first 100 feet or whatever.
Correct. And you have no choice. There's a garage there, there's a house there that they just
Okay.
physically cannot widen it.
You're right, Chad, that was, I jumped ahead off of that. That was an additional waiver that wasn't on the original waivers.
All right, I was muted. I muted myself there by accident. I have a question. When I went after that to the Lurches, they said they were going to be allowed to park their cars on the street there. Is that true or false?
That is correct.
Okay, so we have a street that's 33 feet wide. Is that considering their cars too?
It's a
Or is it-
30-foot right of way, so there's an 8-foot parking lane and then two 10-foot travel lanes. And that is ordinance for a local access street, one of the street sizes. So it's a 28-foot wide paved area. But like I said, two 10-foot travel ways and an 8-foot parking lane, and then there's curb and sidewalk.
And John, back to why we recommended putting the sidewalk on the Stauffer property, so we're not going to interfere with their parking, so we can still allow them to have parking on the one side, because they've been parking there for 100 years. Put the sidewalk on the south side, on the Stauffer piece, and that way we're not affecting their quality of life.
Well, I don't know if we're doing that, but I think they negotiated that with the developer, because when I was out there, and this has been some time, I guess Sal and I were out there about 3 or 4 months ago. They said that it was okay for them to park their vehicles there. So the moral of the story is, and I understand with the sidewalks and all that kind of nonsense, but the moral of the story is, how wide will that, what is the usable width of that street when it comes to traffic going up and down?
At that point there, between Lurch and Stauffer will be 20 feet.
So there will be two 10-foot lanes, one in each direction, which is allowed by your ordinance. And then there will be 8 feet wide, 3 spaces of parallel parking. And it will be signed as private parking for the Lurches only.
Yes.
It says you 28 feet.
With the 8-foot parking lot there.
28 feet apart.
No,
of 28 feet of paving, I'm sorry, of paving. And it'll be striped as well
It will be,
that is correct.
even the parking spaces.
with pavement markings and markings for the parking stalls as well,
Yes.
free parking stalls.
The-
Does that answer the,
Markets.
Proper parking.
No, I mean, on the side,
Yeah, you won't be able to park. You'll be parking in the lane if you're parking there. So it'll.
is there any need to
We
see
can put a no parking sign up.
Yeah, I think we'll be.
no parking on that side? That was somebody that parked there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we get nothing.
John, does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay, so I'll go on to the next one. Now I'll go back to the waivers requested section. Number one was a waiver to allow the cul-de-sac bulb to be partially located within an easement with a 48-foot radii, rather than within a right-of-way with a 60-foot radius.
Lindsay, can you slide the plan then to the right, all as far as you can go to the right?
Mhm.
And then go up to the circle cul-de-sac bulb. There you go. Keep going a little bit. There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as you can see from the overall plan, the property really gets very thin toward the end. Kind of becomes triangular. It's just an odd shaped property. So extending the roadway and then adding the cul-de-sac there, and all the pavement, fire truck can turn around in there, that meets all the ordinance requirements. But we were proposing to keep the right of way, extend that all the way to the end, and have the rest of it be an easement for the homeowners association. So, and then appropriate agreements and easements would be made with for all the rights to access that and also there's also utility needs in there too. And then have the remainder of the right of way there be part of the property of the end unit and open space for the association. And, the goal that we're trying to do is provide this cul-de-sac. And you can see we're in the cul-de-sac there, in that narrow area.
You said there's enough room for a fire truck?
Right, we did provide some truck turning too. That, the 48-foot radius is pretty ordinance, it's a 96-foot diameter. So that meets the ordinance and it's also wide.
And the reason this is important is because if they made that easement area a right of way, then they would not meet their front yard setback requirements for that last lot. So this waiver is important to them.
Yeah, and a couple, not just that end unit, but you have your 60-foot right of way and then also a front yard on top of that too. So it would really constrain that site.
So you'd probably lose 2 lots out of it.
It's a private road. I don't specifically have a problem with it as long as our fire marshal has just reviews and comments on it and gives his blessing. Larry? John, Michelle?
I'm good.
good.
So go to the next one. The next one is a waiver to allow cul-de-sac street length. And on our letter here, we say 665 feet, moving the allowable length of 500 feet. In Chad's review too, he comments that the length should be measured to the end of the cul-de-sac, and that measurement's just to the middle. So it's approximately 700 feet from Maple Avenue to the edge of that pavement. And this is similar to the last comment, just trying to provide the emergency turnaround there in the limited space we have. So we do slightly, we do exceed that 500 foot from Maple Avenue by approximately 200 feet. And again, to the beginning of the cul-de-sac is probably closer to 600 feet with that, 96-foot pavement area there at the end. So it's a slight increase over that. And there also are no houses or townhomes or anything like that in the cul-de-sac as well that have access from CD. All the townhomes are closer to that than 600 feet of the flat.
I have no problem with it.
Well, yeah, the third one was emergency access, but I think
We're gonna get. Is that all right, Chad?
I missed the question.
I just said we can skip number 3, the emergency access. We know we're gonna figure out how to find it.
Yeah, so it's just a waiver that you're gonna take away. You're not gonna request that anymore.
Hopefully, we're gonna take it away.
if we have to come back, I guess it means we've exhausted all options and we'll have to.
We understand that the borough wants to see an emergency access.
We understand it's very. The fourth one was a waiver from providing curbing or other form of rigid edge stabilization along the existing alley to be paved. And that one is the existing alley there, it's uncurbed now. And we were going to repave it, but I think putting.
This is out in front by Maple Avenue.
Yeah, I think this is the alley. Right in here. I don't know if we go back to the next sheet, maybe to the C on.
Back,
Yeah, that one. No, yeah, that one.
this one?
That would be the area.
Oh, shoot.
You're
I'm so
fine.
sorry.
You're really good.
Don't do too good of a job. You might be filling in.
No, it's okay.
That's this area in here now. So right,
Yes, there.
it's narrower and it kind of winds back there.
16 feet wide roughly?
Yeah, yeah.
So you would
We're
just
gonna
have,
pave 12 feet of it to 16. It's 8 foot on each side of the property line. So all these owners here, and even on this property here, the property line goes to the center of the alley, and then there's the additional easement 8 feet on both sides of that. So it's a 16-foot alley, and we were proposing to pave 12 feet
you're just gonna have 2 curb returns
right here.
from, and then it just end.
Yeah, but don't, right.
Right, you're just
The
gonna
curb will come in.
two radiuses, and then it'll just taper, and then it'll just be, you're improving it to much greater than what they have there.
And improving that driveway was a condition of their zoning relief, as long as those property owners allow it. So they still need to get permission from those property owners.
You can see that. Well,
Will that go out all the way on the other side now?
No, it stops at the Johnson property.
We don't wanna cut through. You guys,
So the waiver, just to summarize, the waiver was a waiver from providing curbing along that improved alleyway.
yes.
Right.
The whole length of the alleyway, right?
Correct.
Then move on to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, a waiver to allow the sidewalks to be less than 6 inches from the street right of way. And this is really along the 33-foot wide area. We're using that whole right of way that fit everything in there. So the ordinance requires that the sidewalk must end 6 inches on the inside of the right of way. We're proposing to maximize that space there is to go to the edge of the right of way with the sidewalk. And we are working on pursuing the easements to allow for the construction and then also maintenance of that. Since we're gonna be right on the right of way, we'll need some kind of maintenance agreement with those owners. We're gonna want, the homeowners association to, fix the curb and sidewalk in the future at some point.
And that's just on the Stauffer side.
We're gonna have to do it on both sides.
Okay,
Because of the curb on the roof
got
side,
it, okay.
if they ever come back. And we definitely need construction easements, because there'll be, a couple of feet
In your yard, yeah.
to get the rating higher. And then I think it will also apply, this is something that in part of Chad's letter, they mentioned before, putting the sidewalk in on the south side of Venice for those 6 units. Because the right of way is kind of offset because of that 33-foot right of way, and then we're extending a 7 feet on the upper side. I think this waiver would now apply also to that sidewalk on that lower side. We can provide, easements. And the next one is similar, is also related to the sidewalk, about putting a grass strip between the edge of the sidewalk and the curb. And this is one where we have the sidewalk along the curb, which, for these 18 units, there'll be driveway aprons also functioning as sidewalk. And having the curb and then those driveway aprons without that grass strip. And also just for the site constraints too, provide that grass strip.
Is that grass strip within the subdivision or just the first between stoppers and merchants?
We were asking that for the entire subdivision.
So your sidewalk will go right up to the curb.
Yes.
So in other words, it'll look like the rest of the borough essentially.
Except in front of my house.
What's supposed to chain drive.
You know what, it's a pain.
Like edging it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's on both sides of the curb. I'm okay with it.
Okay, and the next one was to allow angular perpendicular parking on the streets. So this one is, there's 2 areas that we have some additional parking. And just to go back, to meet the parking requirements, we had some variances, and also we had 2, parking spaces per each unit. So we're meeting the ordinance requirements there. And in discussions with the borough, providing additional parking, I think is beneficial for everybody. There's no parking allowed on the streets. So we have some parking spaces here.
How many do we have there? 8?
There's 8 in this space here, and then 5 more up there. And these are really extra parking spaces, just trying to get more parking for this. And the fact that they are perpendicular to the roadway. So 100% of the time would not be a good idea. But again, since this is just an access for these 18 units, a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit, and it's really functioning almost like a parking aisle with all the driveways to fill this space, it would be reasonable to have this.
And this is no different than what we granted for Heather Meadows. But I will tell you guys, you can squeeze a couple more spaces in there.
There's never enough.
There's never enough.
Well-
Never, ever.
And the HOA has to be aware that, they have limited parking. And the HOA is gonna have to say, hey, you can't have 5 cars in one family.
I think that's going to probably be something to take into consideration.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying what you're doing.
the HOA can put parking permits
Yeah.
in their own HOA.
Even if you can squeeze 1 or 2 more somewhere else, I mean, you can never have enough.
I think we've exhausted our efforts on.
I'm
the
not
parking.
saying you haven't, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if you can even, instead of 5 on that cul-de-sac, you can get a 6th one, that would be better. I'm just saying, you can never have enough, and Heather Meadows, we have all kinds of problems there, and we own the roads in Heather Meadows, so the homeowners association comes whining to us. Maybe I shouldn't have said whine, come complaining to us. This case is gonna be different, because they will own the road, so they can't come to town and borough.
We'll have to address it themselves. And I think we don't have that 6th one there. This is great. We can try that.
I get, no, I get, it. I'm just saying.
I think we originally had an extra one there, and as we got into the grading part, we had to take it out. And the next one is directly related to that as well, because we do have parking within 20 feet of the boundary line. And again, it's related to the last one, just trying to provide as much parking as possible.
That would be in the 8-unit building.
And also the other one too, the both within 20 feet. And now, on our landscape plan, we do have screening between the parking areas and those residents there, including a fence in areas where the headlights could reach there, and then also we do have the landscaping plan. Somewhere waiting on this other number 11. Yeah. Move in there so you can see. So you have like the low shrubs along there, the green shrubs that block the headlights. There's going to be a fence along this line. And the other one down here is similar. The shrubs, the low shrubs.
And you have a fence. My biggest concern here is cars coming up that cul-de-sac. Imagine being the homeowner at the end of the cul-de-sac. That's right in their backyard. So you have a fence there, right? Like a privacy type fence
We do have a fence, yeah.
along that line there.
Yeah. I know one of your comments was to just make sure we do that more clearly too.
And the emergency access will obviously not impact that fence that's coming out the side, if I recall, right? Your option 1.
I mean, we might have to move some things around. So I know we have some vegetation proposed where the emergency access would go. So we might have to move some things around, but we keep this, the intent of blocking the lights and providing that screen.
And then the same thing on your 8-space parking lot. You have a fence along there as well, don't you?
We have this-
Or is that just evergreens?
I think it's just evergreen shrubs on that.
Okay, and you're pretty far off the apartment buildings there, aren't you?
Excuse me?
You're pretty far off the apartment buildings in that parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the apartments are parallel to the property line.
Right.
And it's either or, Chad, it's not both. It's either a fence or shrubs in that land development ordinance, correct?
Yeah, well, there's a buffer required, but there's also a screen that I think should be required, and the borough can take the stance that the fence will take the place of the landscaping.
Okay.
Now, did I hear you right? Are you going to install the sidewalk along those southern units?
We are. I think we were going to extend it just to the edge of those parking spaces.
So just along the frontage of the units, not along the entire parking lot?
Right, that's what we would like to do, right?
Okay, and I think that comes up later. The reason I bring it up now is because if you were to put sidewalk along that parking lot, then those shrubs go away. You can't do both.
Right, yeah. And that's one of the things we were thinking of. I mean, and also with the rain garden there.
I don't think.
You'd rather the rain garden than shrubs than the sidewalk.
Yes. Because you also don't know where they're gonna park. If they're gonna park the 6 units up there, they're never gonna use the sidewalk. Again, they could walk in the parking area, and then they're gonna pick the sidewalk up if they're on the southern side, or they're gonna cross the street and they're gonna go to one of those other 12 units. So I'd rather have the shrubs and the rain garden there. And I think that the shrubs will solve the problem with the headlights.
I can move on. Next one is a waiver to allow the proposed lots to have frontage along a private street rather than a public street. I think this one is kind of related to some of the ones we talked about. Just that if the borough not taking ownership of the street, we have to ask for a waiver. So we can have access to that street. And then the next one was a waiver from planting new trees a minimum of 5 feet from the sidewalk. And this is mainly, it's just to allow variable tree spacing. We're not proposing fewer trees. It's just a different layout. Because of the way that the townhomes are oriented with the driveways, we're proposing the trees in the locations on the property.
That's not shown.
This is what we're proposing. So I'm going to go back to here. We have calculations on here. This is what we're proposing. I think the spacing is what, 50 feet. So we have, can't really put them every 50 feet because of the driveway. So we kind of, bunch them together, 3 here, and then some other ones, and then so we bunch them together where we can. So we're not meeting spacing requirements, but we're meeting the number.
We're not losing the number of trees, we still have the same
Correct.
number of trees.
Yeah.
Or
So
you,
it's,
where you can't put the tree, you have it
we
moved
need to
space
somewhere else.
elsewhere else, okay. Right.
Yeah, and then also because it's a, I'm just double checking this here. And I think the next one is the same. I think I skipped the one. The one was a waiver from planting new trees a minimum of 5 feet from the sidewalks. And then the related one was a waiver from planting street trees at the spacing required in the section. So I
They go
jumped
hand in hand.
over one, but they're hand in hand, right? And I think it's the same goal is, we're using some, more flexibility, but we're still meeting the number of trees. Still have a,
Want to keep trees out of front yards anyhow. Sewer lateral. Water line.
yeah, and then the next one is also at the landscaping, a waiver to allow different species of plants that moves in this section. So in the ordinance, there are some specific plantings that are referenced, and we're just proposing some alternates.
Why is that?
We had our landscape architect just chose them because they were being native and more suitable, thought they were more suitable for the buffer. So the ones that is proposing, red chokeberry shrubs, inkberry, holly, and Arabic viburnum. I'm not too familiar with those, but
Well, feel free to adjust it.
And this one here this is related to the intersection of Venice Square and Maple Avenue. A waiver from providing right-of-way arcs with a minimum radius of 20 feet. And then a waiver to allow pavement arcs of 10 feet and 15 feet rather than 35 feet. And this is directly related to Lurch and Stockton, that intersection there. Because we only have that limited right-of-way between both Maple and on Venice Square. So I think we're just trying to maximize what we can provide in the area.
So all the way except for the waiting for the emergency access, we're taking that off the board. And then the additional waiver not in Chad's list is from 22-404.1, which was the local access to Baltimore Road. Any other comments in any of the other review letters you have questions, problems, issues with?
I believe so. I'm just double checking. I think the McMahon letter had a lot of, some of the same comments that Chad had. No, I didn't see anything else.
I think, well, I'm not going to speak before, but I think the consensus of the board is there are any of the waivers. I think the consensus of the township is certainly move this along, but really like to see what the outcome of this emergency access is. So I think before we grant approval, we'd like to see what that outcome is going to be so that we can grant approval. I mean, we certainly have no issues, at least at this point, other than what was discussed with Chad's. And, obviously, we keep the same moving along, we want to see what the outcome is.
Well, we do have the exhibit, I think that we shared it with you. And because of COVID and timing and everything else, we're trying to move this thing to the next stage as well.
So what would we be holding?
Well, it's just not that, it's about timing. It's about timing. I mean, obviously, we would like to try to move this forward and hopefully come to terms over the next 30 or 45 days, instead of it being pushed out to the end of the year. And it's about time. It's always about time. And it's been a hard 15 months. So,
You know, we all, right? So you have to do something with that emergency access thing.
well, and we've designed it, and this is the path that we're proceeding with. And that's just why we'd like to move forward.
You know, where are you at now on that?
Well, we have the sign, we're waiting for a response from the property owner of Hatfield Village Department. So we're waiting.
Waivers, the exception, taking the emergency access off of there. That kind of puts them in the driving seat that they need to get that done, or else they need to come back to the borough.
I'm sorry, I guess that question.
If we don't approve a waiver for the emergency access, then they have to get it done.
Well,
Or come back to
right.
us.
We're not going to grant that waiver. We
Right.
would have to provide that.
Right.
Or fight the battle with council.
Is that what you're saying, Mark?
Yeah,
Just have it over here, do every, grant everything else.
So the discussion with the members present is to grant the waivers excluding the waiver for the emergency access. So remove that as a request, grant all the other waivers that are requested in the plan submission. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And wait to see, you could grant the waivers and then request to see the plan with the final access. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's what Larry had said.
Did John and Michelle, did you hear that?
Yeah, is that what Ken was saying first, though?
Yes.
Okay,
No, Ken was just saying, come back with the revised plan, adding all the waivers to the plan, removing that one, and and then once we figure out what's going on with the emergency access, we can then grant the preliminary or even preliminary final, depending on how far along we are. Where only because right now the plans don't show. What Larry was saying was grant the waivers tonight so they know that they have secured the waivers. Take that waiver for the emergency access off, and that way they know that they got the waivers, they can make the changes and then come back.
Would
I agree with Ken's plan.
that, I mean, would that allow you to move forward with some things? Chad, what was that, Chad?
That was John
John.
Cresser. Chad, other issues that may be problematic or concern for this plan at this time. And I believe, was it the Conservation District letter that had a comment about stormwater?
Yeah, I'm going to meet with the engineer to go over the stormwater comments. Certainly it's a very complicated site. It's a complicated designing. I think we really need to put our heads together and see what makes the most sense. That being said, I'm comfortable that we'll make the stormwater management work. It's just a matter of what it's going to take to get there. The big issues are certainly, not to beat it to death here, but emergency access. I know how important that is to the borough, and obviously all the legal rights that they need to obtain. They can't obviously do any of this until they have the rights with the quitclaim. They have the rights with the easements from the adjoining properties, which can quite frankly be part of the final approval once that time comes. They need to know about their waivers. That's critical, or else they might as well not move forward if they don't think they're going to get the waivers.
So granting the waivers tonight would give them the capability to move forward and then secure the quick claims and the emergency road access. And then
Yeah,
work out the issues with the stormwater, you and the engineer, but securing the waivers that were discussed minus the emergency road access, which we're going to remove, gives them the capability to move forward.
Yeah, they'll want some level of assurance that they're going to get these waivers, because without some of these waivers, this project goes away.
Okay.
So, you guys halfway?
Yes. I want to mention too, because you mentioned now preliminary final. That wasn't something we talked about. Would that be a waiver? Would we need to ask for that? That's something that we can add to this.
I don't remember what our ordinance says. I would think that if you get your stormwater revised and the emergency access, Chad, do you see a reason why if they get their stormwater, their emergency access, and clean up some of these comments, we couldn't grant a preliminary and final?
I don't see why you couldn't. I typically like to see some of these issues buttoned up almost completely. I'd want some level of comfort that the stormwater management is going to work in a reasonable way. So I wouldn't say that their next submission, I would recommend a preliminary final approval. It really depends on what they come back with.
I think, I think rather than, if we grant the waivers tonight, or recommend the waivers tonight, you have to go before council, have them granted. And the next time you come before this board, assuming the stormwater has been buttoned up to Chad's satisfaction, emergency access is to the township satisfaction. And all we're left are some minor things and maybe your permits. I know you have a long road to hoe because you have to have your conservation district in by the end of the month. Or you have to get a waiver from that from the conservation district, long submission time. But I think if those items are buttoned up, then I think we could grant a preliminary and final so that you only come back one more time. You don't have to come back multiple times.
And I think that's meeting us with the waivers, because then we know what we're dealing with. We could come back, and I guess, is that a waiver? Is that a waiver?
I guess that was kind of my question.
Is that a waiver?
Waiver.
That you do a preliminary final, is that a waiver from the ordinance?
I don't have it. Do you have it work? You don't- it's here.
Yeah, that's procedural. I don't know off the top of my head if it's a waiver. or even if Borough Council would want the planning, or require the planning commission's recommendation on a waiver like that.
And it's
And then, yeah,
it's
so I'm only
basically,
mentioning it just to make sure we're all.
all right.
That would allow us to come back. And do, I think you like, enough. We really have.
Hopefully by the time you go to order it,
It'll come back
it'll
down.
come back down.
I used to be able to find it quickly, but the borough has a new website.
And I think chat.
I think we're all,
Yeah.
so we probably don't need to answer that.
Right.
Yeah, so if we need to, we can always.
We can just add it.
At that time.
Yeah.
John and Michelle, are you
I'm
okay
getting
with,
close.
are you okay with entertaining a motion for the waivers tonight? And then having them come back for preliminary and final whenever they get their items resolved with chat?
I think that would be all right.
John?
I'm good with that.
So I would ask for the recommendation of approval to grant waivers for section 22-401.1 for the proposed street classification as a local street.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
And this would be to our developers here. Did you, when you originally bought the land, did you buy the Lauman property too? The whole property?
Allow me.
We actually put it under agreement, in its entirety.
What does that mean?
We,
Do you own it or not own it?
we do not own it. I'm sorry, I have to think, I had to think back. We do
That's
not.
all right.
That is why Mr. Horrocks is a party of record, on the application. He wanted, Mr. Horrocks and, Prestige has a relationship on some other projects, and he wanted the home. So this is just how we had worked it out. So that's why he's a party on the application.
That answer your question?
So somebody had purchased the home at that time. You purchased part of the land?
Actually, we never purchased any of it.
No, no kidding. All right,
No.
very good. Thank you.
So then I would enter, 22-4083B, waiver to allow the cul-de-sac bulb to be partially within the easement. 22-4083C, waiver to allow the cul-de-sac length. 4083D, waiver from provide, oh no, we're striking that. We're striking 483D. 22-409D, waiver from providing curbing along the existing alley. 22-413F, a waiver to be less than, for the sidewalk to be less than 6 inches from the right of way. That is A, and then B, a waiver to allow the sidewalk to be adjacent to the curb rather than providing the grass strip. 22-414A2, waiver to allow the angle or perpendicular parking to a street. 22-414B2, a waiver to allow parking within 20 feet of the track boundary. Waiver from 22-418.5, a waiver to allow the proposed lots to have frontage along a private street. 22-420 1B2, a waiver from the plantings, New Street, minimum 5 feet from the sidewalk. 22-421B3, a waiver from planting the spacing along the required street. 22-421-1C3 to allow the different type of plantings. And then 22-428 A is waiver from providing the right-of-way arc minimum radius of 20 feet. That's along the Bennett's Court and Broad Street. And a waiver to allow pavement arcs of 10 feet and 15 feet rather than 35 feet where the proposed Bennett Court meets Maple Avenue.
Which is 22-409D, is that supposed to be 409 on D? Just says the correct section.
What number is that?
Number 4.
Yeah, it's 3. It's a subsection of 491D. So you're not recommending a waiver from the entire section D. There's a subsection below that you're
So it's actually-
recommending.
I missed that,
No,
yes.
that's okay.
So,
I would recommend a waiver of granting those waivers.
so we have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, so the plan is you guys, the items cleaned up, show us the emergency access, come back with a revised plan. So that, and then the intention would be, assuming we have everything together, the planning commission would recommend a preliminary and final to Borough Council. You're gonna have to make coordinate with Mike to get on a Borough Council meeting for the granting of the waivers, unless you want to wait and go after you come back in, that's your call.
So
And Ken, for the benefit of these gentlemen, what level of completion, should I say, for this emergency access would the planning commission require to let them take the next step? Do you need a formal agreement? Do you need, you're going to want something.
Yeah, I think the thing would be, I don't need cash in hand, but I would at least want some kind of an agreement that this is where it's gonna be. I don't wanna find out and we're gonna grant preliminary and final approval, and then we have another scheme here. I'd like to make sure this is what we're going with. I mean, what you provided to us, I think is very acceptable and very doable. But then you said you had a plan B, if plan A doesn't work. Well, I need you to come in
With the plan.
with a plan A or plan B, whatever you want to do. Certainly, I think plan A, I mean, again, notwithstanding costs of real estate, if there is a cost, plan A certainly is a much shorter,
Plan A is our desire. as well.
yeah, it's a much shorter way to go. And if you use grass pavers, you're not even gonna know it's there.
But you'll want something in writing from those affected property owners
Yes,
stating their authorization. Okay. I think that's what they should know.
and then obviously your blessing on the stormwater and any other outstanding comments that, you deem necessary, that they need to resolve.
Understood.
Eric.
And then, I'm sorry, back to the intersection. Yeah, if I understand correctly, you're going to reach out to your traffic engineer, whether or not he recommends a 3-way stop? Where
Yes,
did you nix that?
I'll do that tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Chad, subdivision, land development, section 22-306 gives you the preliminary, and 22-308 gives you the final plan submission procedures, all right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and if I recall correctly, there is something that says if they have all the certifications on the plans, then Borough Council can approve preliminary final, but I don't recall if that's just a minor plan or if that, it's a full subdivision.
The intent of the planning commission would be the preliminary and final, assuming all your i's are dotted and t's are crossed that.
And they are on scheduled for, there's a Borough Council meeting Wednesday, which they are on the agenda.
Does it make sense for us to take up the borough's time?
Well, for the waivers,
You know, 100%.
you need
Okay.
the way, so Borough Council is going to hear that you received approval for the waivers from the planning commission. All right, the planning commission recommended to Borough Council that they approved all the waivers that Mr. Farrell read, minus the one that he did not. Okay, so we'll see if Borough Council feels that way on Wednesday night. And this way, this, you're in the beginning of the meeting, so it would help you take care of that.
Yeah.
All right. And then, just so you know, the next Borough Planning Commission meeting is actually
June 14th.
June 12th.
12th.
Yeah,
Push the week.
yes. I believe- Hold on, let me go back and check.
Thought it was June 14th.
June 14th, I'm sorry. June 14th. June 12th is a Saturday, so no one will be here. I'm sorry. June 14th, it was pushed a week, I believe,
So that kind of helps us.
yeah. Because the first Borough Council meeting is not till later in the month. We're gonna meet once a month, June, July, and August,
Okay.
Borough Council,
So that works.
all right?
Sorry, what was that date again?
14.
14th of June is the next planning commission meeting.
Here, it's written on the agenda, number 7.
And back to preliminary final, section 22-308-1B. A final plan for an application that has not been previously approved or previously granted preliminary plan approval may be granted concurrent preliminary and final plan approval in compliance with the following. The following says you have to meet all the preliminary and final plan submission requirements. Compliance with the review procedure and final plan complies with some of these subsections. Those subsections say all engineering and other technical details have been resolved to the satisfaction of the borough engineer and other technical advisors. A signed recommendation is received from the Borough Planning Commission. All financial guarantees and legal agreements have been found satisfactory by the solicitor. Variances and waivers and all necessary permits have been obtained from the applicable regulatory. So that pretty much says everything has to be buttoned up.
That makes sense.
So they can get preliminary final from the planning commission and Borough Council, should all this be achieved.
Yeah, but that means they have to have everything like 100% done at that point.
Right.
Which typically, a municipality would grant a conditional final approval with some of the permits outstanding. The legal descriptions may be not complete. So this pretty much says everything has to be 100% done in order for that to occur.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. We all know that. So
Right.
It'll be a conditional final. So
Kate, I'll have to write that up.
If you want to write that down, guys, it's 22-308B, 1B.
okay. Thank you. We're gonna let you guys get on with the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Not
you.
too much.
Good job filling in.
Thanks. I'll be here next month too. Do you want me to follow them down and lock the door?
Thank you. Thank you again.
Gentlemen, have a good night.
All right, we have old business, 43 River Avenue, land development update.
So you should have received probably the latest packet as well on that. It was probably sent to you, all of you as well.
Wrong resolution. I don't think I got.
I, was that, was in a separate, smaller envelope?
Yeah.
It was and it was probably marked, April 22nd, 2021.
They're talking like courier.
So that, and then you have a copy of the preliminary residential subdivision or resolution that council approved, all right? 443, and I believe they're looking, Chad, you're working on reviewing 43 and to have them on the June 14th agenda?
Yes, you need the review by June 10. So I have not yet opened it, but I have it on my list.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Anyone want to discuss that? It was just an update so that you know that the plan was sent out and that the resolution was in your packets. Edinburgh Square land development. They have, if you can tell by the email chain, they were issued a stop order and they were to supply the borough with a plan of how they wanted to proceed. The water lines were actually placed in the wrong location by the developer. And this all happened around Christmas. And at that time, Chad and I discussed it. We said that it stop, no more, okay, till you bring a plan explaining how you're going to solve the problem that you created. Is that fair to say, Chad?
Yes.
And then I met with Mr. Caracosa and he didn't like that. He said, it's a field change. I'll meet you out there. And we stuck to our guns and said, no, we want to see it on paper. Because what's going to happen if they don't put things in the right spot as the original plan, we're going to end up with sewer lines crossing multiple properties and under driveways and clean outs in driveways, Chad?
Yes, correct.
So we don't want to leave with this mess behind. So we're going to have to see, and plus we don't need 5 or 6 bends in a sewer pipe.
No.
So we're going to see how they, he did send the plans, correct, Chad?
He did. He sent me something last week. I haven't, again, looked at that yet either, but I will soon.
Okay. So Chad has that, and once he gets a chance to review it, we'll talk, and then we'll decide if we're going to accept what he's proposing or if we're going to make some recommendations on what we think, or what the engineer thinks should be done. Fair enough to say?
Yep, I agree.
All right. So that's where we are with Edinburgh Square.
All right,
I believe, another point of that, I believe he wants to flip the one house as well, which means mirror it from what you saw on your previous, I'll say approved plan. That's on lot 2. I'm aware of it. Again, I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm pretty sure that's his intention.
You say flip the house.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Flip the house and driveway. So,
Okay.
right.
So that he can achieve that.
I don't know if it's for that purpose or a different purpose.
Okay. But that's on what you've received.
I believe so.
Okay. All right. More to come. I know you thought Edinburgh Square would be built by now, but sorry, it's not.
Just like to get it done.
He hasn't fixed the fencing yet either.
Really? He said he was out that day.
He did it that day. He fixed it. It may have come down again. I'll have it checked tomorrow.
There's big gaps in it of openings.
Lawrence Construction.
Oh, at the, where the stones are, Michelle?
Some where the stones are, and then there's some in a couple of different spots too.
All right, I'll have the code enforcement out there, check it tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, new business, we have Penn Street sketch plans.
Yeah, in your package was a sketch plan of the Penn Street project. So this home is going to be torn down, and they're going to they would like to put 4 townhouses on this property. It butts up to Penn Colonial Apartments owned by Howard Heckler. Mr. Heckler and his team actually looked at the property and said, they're putting this property within 5 feet of my property line, and I already have a water problem. I'd like to see something less. So
No.
there were some other issues that they wanted to see as well. That all the properties would not be rental properties, and it would be controlled by some type of HOA, and they, in their declaration, in their bylaws or whatever they call them.
Yeah, I mean, there's no road frontage,
Right.
so I'm sure they're gonna need variances unless they're gonna try to condo it. But even at that, I think we need some variances. It would be nice if they would actually put the borough and not the township on the title block of the plan, but that's just a little minor pet peeve of mine.
So it's like you're trying to squeeze a lot in.
They are, and Kate is communicating with the engineer on some comments back from Howard.
Are they looking for a review from our consultants?
We met with them, and they brought this in, and we said, okay, we had them all here together, and we said, look, you have some challenges. Before we go any further with the sketch plan, let's talk to the adjacent neighbors because of it. And they had some comments, and then they went down, and I conveyed those comments to Kate, restricting the, how many are going to be rental opportunities, things like that. And, who's going to be responsible for plowing it, because the borough's not going to plow it. So they've talked about making a condo or HOA association. And then after Howard's team went down and looked at it, he called back and says, that's way too much for that property, something less. And Kate's was either did or will convey that to the developer.
And Ken, back to your first point, they would require significant variances, primarily for setbacks.
Yeah, there's no frontage requirement or met. And even if they did some kind of a condo, I'd have to look at the ordinance to see how that would apply if it was a condo situation, but still at all.
Yeah, and that was discussed. We discussed, are they going to own individual lots? Are they going to own, within the walls of the units, which you would see typically with a townhome community. But even so, it's difficult to see on this plan, but I don't know, the setback's like 40 feet, and they want to be within, say, 8 feet of the property line. So they would need, like I said, significant setback relief along with a number of others.
They got a long road.
But I wanted you to know, because they did come in to talk to the borough staff.
All right. Meeting dates, we have
They were in front of you. They were in their packet.
this is for what reason? Just
Just an FYI.
an FYI.
Just keep us on track, all right? block out your dates, all right? Let's see.
Codification.
So the borough has secured code 360 to do codification for the borough, and that was funded in this year's budget.
The feral cat ordinance.
So this was an item that was brought up to Borough Council. And then the Planning, Building and Zoning Committee is going to try to schedule a meeting on this to discuss it as well. Feral cats have become an issue with some neighbors, in the neighborhoods. And we drafted this ordinance, and then we received some letters from some residents in support and opposed to the keeping of feral cats in the neighborhoods.
See some signs saved the cats.
Yes, we sure will.
So, just a question. 5-5. Do you have a borough meeting program sponsored by the borough?
No.
So we're gonna have to pay for that?
No.
How are we gonna fund this? And I see, I see what you're saying.
The people who actually feed feral cats, the mindset is to make them responsible for what they do by some type of fee.
How do we-
Well, the one letter was the gentleman said, I like cats.
Yeah,
And I take, if he didn't feed them, no one would. Well, if you're gonna feed them, then you have to, you're taking ownership of it. And someone has also said, well, there's squirrels, there's raccoons, there's other animals that are running wild as well. Deer, fox, but do people actually feed them? And no, I guess they're, I don't know if the right term is scavengers, but they are. So but the cats are being fed. And if you don't neuter them, the colony continues to grow. Creating.
yeah, that's what when I was reading this, I was thinking, what's this?
Mike, I have a couple questions. First question is, how many different areas are affected besides that lady's
John,
house?
hang on one second. Sorry,
Finish.
Larry's talking. Hang on one
Yeah,
second.
then, we have to fund the person to do it,
So there's a couple organizations out there, Stray Cat, Blue, Cat, something else, Cat Blue. So they have a couple organizations, and then what they do is they're the ones that go out, capture them, neuter them, and release them back to the area. Okay. They used to take them to farms and all that.
Right.
Nobody wants cats. Farms are dwindling. Okay. So they have their allotment that they need to keep their mouse population down in their barns and all that. So it's becoming a problem in municipalities. And the only reason why it became, it was brought to our attention. How many municipalities did you see that had?
I like your map.
Like 6.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so the ones with circles are the only ones that don't have, it, right?
Yeah, the ones with X's have them. The ones with circles do not. I didn't get
Oh, okay.
to that. I tried to stay,
Everybody had it.
We're
Yeah.
staying local. We were trying to stay local.
yeah.
So John, I'm sorry, your question, does anybody else have?
I have
John,
a question.
Please.
The first question was, we did receive a letter from a particular person, and that is one location. Are there other locations in the borough?
As of today, there were, as a matter of fact, we received, someone was in this morning and had brought to the attention of the borough that Lambert Street has a decent supply of cats roaming the neighborhood.
Anywhere else?
Not that I'm aware of at this time.
Okay. Now, in this draft, it talks about, you know, you have these organizations that, first of all, the problem is so-called destruction that I read in the letter. And then it also says videos. Do we have videos of destruction, by the way? Was that submitted?
It was not submitted.
All right. Next thing. Okay, see, they catch the cat, they take it in, they neuter the cat. You know, clip the ear for identification purpose, and they bring it back out. They release the cat. What did that accomplish besides stopping offspring?
That's it.
That's all it did.
Stop it.
Okay,
Okay.
so this sort of reminds me of the bees, because you know, like identifying stray cats, whose responsibility it is. What about if somebody says, that ain't my cat? You can take that one, or whatever. What do we do at that point? I mean, what's in it? Who's going to police this thing? And let me think some more. Gag, you can respond to a couple things I asked.
Well, I think one of the things it does is it allows the borough to have enforcement. So we can send code enforcement out to say, hey, there's a cat problem, you're feeding them. If you're gonna feed them, you're taking ownership. If you're taking ownership, you have to spay and neuter them. Without an ordinance, we can't enforce anything. So we need to have the ordinance to be able to enforce something. So realistically, are we going to do a lot with it? Maybe not, but what we can do with it, at least we have the ordinance to enforce something. And that's really what this ordinance does. If in the event the township would ever get a animal control officer, or if they do have an animal control officer, again, with the ordinance being placed, that will allow them to be able to enforce that on the borough's behalf.
So it wouldn't be like an active, that.
Right. I don't think we're not gonna have a SWAT team that's gonna be going from town looking for feral cats, but when we recognize we have problems, this ordinance gives us the means to be able to control it, or at least go to them and say, hey, we have an ordinance, here it is. You have to comply with this or stop feeding the cats. If you stop feeding the cats, they will hopefully go someplace else.
I'm just, you know, trying to be sensitive to getting the borough, us, you know, into the position where this neighbor's not happy with that neighbor, so they call it.
Right.
They come, you know, like, you know. Yeah.
I agree with you on that, Larry. With the neighbors just calling in on each other, being unhappy.
So are you looking for comments?
If you have any comments you want to make on the draft, additions, deletions, do you want to move it forward? You know, do you want to, it was supposed to go to Planning, Building and Zoning Committee. They haven't met yet.
Well, can we, obviously Bennett's Court is coming back, anticipating it's coming back next month. Can we have comments for next month so we can pass those comments on to building planning and zoning committee so that they can pass that on to council, and council can make a decision on what they want to do.
That would be good, because there's a lot of good information here from other municipalities.
Yes.
Had to go through it.
And just redline it and,
Yeah.
you know, we can, have a quick conversation next time and we can,
Take the list till next week.
I guess if I could add to this James Fox, what was that his name? James Fox? I forget. James somebody. At any rate, he wrote a letter and talking about how he feeds the cats. And then he did mention that the problem this year, why there were so many cats that he had, was because of the COVID. All these places were closed down. The SPCA or whatever, wherever they put these things.
The
At any
Stray
rate,
Cat Blues and all them.
yeah, thanks. Went from 20 cats to 10 cats. This guy has neutered cats, got them taken care of out of his own pocket. So my question is, do we really need to get involved in something like this? Because these people seem to like cats and they take care of their problems. And it was an unusual circumstance for the last year that these institutions were closed, but this guy's trying to find homes for these cats. And like you said, he went from 20 to 10. The interesting part is it's kind of funny who's also helping him take care of his cats. I'll leave it nameless.
Well, I think if we have an ordinance, we don't necessarily need to act on it. We just need to, we have it so we can do enforcement if we choose to do enforcement. That's all. If we don't have an ordinance, then we can't enforce that. If it becomes an issue, it becomes a neighbor issue because, resident A doesn't like cats and resident B loves cats and they're all swarming at resident B's house because they're getting fed. Maybe it's not an issue, but if it becomes an issue and we don't have an ordinance, then we can't enforce it. It gives us a tool in our toolbox to be able to enforce.
To control us.
If we choose to.
It's
I mean,
just
if
another
we-
ordinance to control.
An ordinance like this, we're not gonna say you can have like 2 beehives or 2 stray cats, because you're not gonna be able to control that. So it's almost an either or, but again, if we choose not to do anything because it's not a big enough issue, we don't have to do anything, but it's a tool.
It's sort of like the bees. Okay, the bees, you couldn't identify which colony went where. Okay, the guy explained this to us that the bees that I think at my house could be not his bees, but somebody from Hilltowns or something like that. That was with the bees. The cats, you got them going through all this programming as far as, making sure they're neutered and all that, which is wonderful. I think it's okay. The question is, how are you going to identify who's doing what and when? Because you're releasing them back to the same area.
But the ones that are neutered have their ears clipped.
Yeah, but they're not, we're not talking about, in the letter, it said damage to items, damage was the problem. They said to a car cover, some kind of a screen and something else, but we're releasing the same cats back into the same area. But they're just neutered.
Right. So
Okay.
that the colony doesn't grow.
Well, doesn't grow. But you're asking the people to share the responsibility since they're feeding the cats. A lot of these people feel sorry for cats. It's not just in our little borough, it's all over.
There's a lot of comments on the Hatfield community page about feral cats, and a lot of people feed them too.
What is your recommendation not to?
Well, here's my recommendation is like this fella said, he went from 20 cats to 10. He's taking care of his own problem. My suggestion might be, why don't we, before we make a lot of enemies on both sides, either or, why don't we wait and see how many he does find, he finds homes for these cats and so on. How many, if he does reduce the population before we get drastic and have, you know, just another thing to annoy people.
We don't have a problem with this one resident. Others that are adding to the problem.
As far
Can't
as
hear you.
Yeah,
that I'm not aware of. Jim, the question was, is there more than one resident feeding cats?
Absolutely. You can go on the Hatfield community page and see that.
Okay. So there's more than one resident in the borough feeding cats.
Yes.
we might have one responsible cat feeder, but the others might not be as responsible and contributing to the problem. If that's the case, we need to have something to handle the problem and get neighbors' complaints. Right now, we have nothing.
What happens though when code enforcement comes out and the person has all the cat bowls away and everything? How can you prove that the cats are the responsibility of that person?
That's a challenge.
Well, yeah, I think it's a challenge all in all, but you'll see, you'll see the remnants of them feeding the cats. I mean, obviously, he's not gonna go in day one. We have to do our homework before we pull the ordinance out and says, here, you gotta do this with the ordinance. I mean, obviously, again, it's only a tool. It's only a tool to be able to address a problem. And again, it's not gonna be a one-time visit. You're gonna have to, look to see where there's a problem. You're gonna have to go back a couple times. You're gonna have to see what we have, and then if the borough decides that we wanna do something, we now have a tool to be able to do it. We may enact this ordinance and never use it.
I think what you said earlier makes sense, because there's a lot of information here. Let's go through it and see if there's things, maybe we can recommend something to it.
Yeah, and maybe comb through the information and, maybe there's some other things that you can come up with to add to it, or maybe review the information and we figure out, hey man, this isn't worth it. And at least we've reviewed the information, we looked at other ordinances, and we made a decision that we don't want to do anything. Maybe it'll work the other way, depending on what we have, because there's other means of, maybe we don't want to be involved. Maybe the borough doesn't want to do this. Just based, and I'm not saying just based on this information. I'm sure there's places in Bucks County that has ordinances like this. Small little boroughs, New Britain Borough, Doylestown Borough, our borough. Ones that may also have an ordinance like this, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot in our immediate area, and you're peppered from the northern part to the southern part, and really nothing in the middle. Maybe some of the next townships, the county over might have something, or something in Chester County, you have Kennett Square Borough, you have some other little boroughs that may have some other stuff we can look at. So maybe, and maybe they have a different view on it. It's just something to think about. It's also, if we don't address it now, it's going to get out of hand. It potentially could get out of hand to a point where when we want to address it, we were already behind the 8 ball. And that's what we don't want to be.
I mean, the responsibility of taking care of them, if you're feeding them and all, getting them neutered and spayed, I understand that part. But the colony parts where there's colony fees and all, I hate to see that guy who's being a responsible person get nailed with a colony fee and have to work with an agency because he wants to be a colony.
And that's something we can maybe, if we want to take that out of the ordinance, we can. I mean, that's why I'm saying is if we mark it up, first of all, let's make a decision if we even want to present this to council. Number one. Number two, what recommendations to the ordinance can we make? Chad.
Yes.
I don't think you want to hear about cats. If you want to pull off, you can.
You okay with that? You don't need me for the sewer ordinance?
Oh, do,
You get sewer ordinance.
all right, I'm sorry, my bad, all
Let's
right,
just table that.
all right. Let's look at it. And see if there's some recommendations. You want to take that colony fee out or whatever, by all means, you know, that's your recommendation to do that. If there's some other ordinances, you can find that maybe somebody else has a better idea, I don't know. And let's talk about it next meeting. Come up with
Okay.
different recommendations. Maybe somebody has some other things. I know where I work, we have an ordinance that they're back and forth on whether they want to pass it or not. So I'll look at that and I'll see, you know, if there's some different, maybe a different ideal of how the ordinance should be written. Maybe we can come up with mesh a couple of these together and come up with something a little better.
That makes more sense.
All right,
Next.
all right, Chad. Now,
I'm here.
All right, so this sewer lateral repair ordinance was started with HTMA and Hatfield Township. The Hatfield Township Municipal Authority, which where we send all our sewage, and then they went to Hatfield Township and said, look, we want to draft an ordinance to get this, to have these the private laterals televised during sales. So that one was brought to the Hatfield Township manager, Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners, and then they asked the borough if they would participate as well. So the first go round at the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners, this blew up in their face with the residents. So they went back and looked at some of the recommendations that were made. So the first time this was delivered to the Hatfield Borough Council, one of the residents was opposed to it and did some research and wrote a lengthy email on how we should approach it. So what we did was we sent it back to committee. Lindsay, again, did all the research necessary and found several dozen, over a dozen ordinances in the county where people, where municipalities address this issue. This was an item that DEP had mentioned to HTMA for years, that maybe you should start looking at some type of, if you're doing all the repairs to your system, why aren't you making the private laterals do repairs to their system? Knowing that, for instance, my house, built in 1954, the sewer lateral probably has never been replaced from the house to the main, to the right, to where the borough takes ownership at the street behind the curb. So, and then they finally put it as a note in their Chapter 94 report. So there was other municipalities that they were told to do this as well. They did nothing. And DEP came in and made them televise every lateral in their jurisdiction. So making this, or adopting something like this to make it as part of the property transfer to televise your property to your lateral to see what if there's any cracks or inflow infiltration was the recommendation from HTMA. Since we contribute to their system. So what you have in front of you is a draft. Borough Council, Utilities Committee took that, the 13 or 14 ordinances that we had, put them together along with the comments from one resident and revised what you have in front of you. And that, I believe, Chad, did Kate incorporate the comments that you made the other day?
I don't think she sent out an updated version. I'll say my
Okay.
comments were more aesthetic than anything.
Okay,
So the meat of it wouldn't change.
but some of the things that were raised have been revised in this. But I wanted you to know about this because it's going back to Borough Council for them to see some of those revisions. You'll see it again probably in June. I don't think it's going to be advertised for a hearing anytime soon.
And these are the same that the township wants to approve as well.
Township did approve it at their last month's meeting. The township finally came up with the language that they could adopt it, and they did.
So you're looking for comments from us?
You have any comments you want to see, about this? And I'll share when I do get the updated draft from Kate, when Kate and Chad have their language done, I'll make sure you get that as well.
Okay. Very good. All right. Is there anything else under new business? There's no action items?
Well, you actually did the action item with Venice Court.
That's fine. The next meeting will presumably be June 14th, that they'll be back in with revised plans. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice seeing everybody. Take care.
You
See
too.
ya. Thanks.
Bye.
Jeff.
Bye.